What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a video on Pathfinder Gallowspire Survivors, a roguelite action RPG in the vein of Vampire Survivors, set of course in the Pathfinder universe, more specifically a large dungeon complex known as Gallowspire, which served as the home of the premier lich of the Pathfinder universe, Tor Bafon. This particular game is launching today into early access, though Become Studios, the people making the title, did send me over a little bit of early access so I could bring this video to you guys today. But to catch up anybody who is completely lost, earlier this year, Paizo, the creators of Pathfinder, announced a partnership with Become Studios to make 2 Pathfinder games, one of which was a Kickstarter project that has since been funded and everything, and the second is the smaller title, which is Gallowspire Survivors. I've already made a video talking about Abomination Vaults and the information we have there, and now it's time to take a look at Gallowspire here. Personally, I was very curious to see how, if at all, they tried to adapt the Pathfinder concepts into a game like this, as roguelite isn't exactly what you think of when you think of Pathfinder. And for the most part, I think they did a pretty good job, at least in terms of making it unique and stand out a little bit. Right away though, we pick our characters. We have a couple different models for each of the 3 playable classes currently, the fighter, the rogue, and the wizard. And then from there, we are dropped into the sort of main menu page. Each of these 3 characters can be customized a bit via stats and talents as you play the game, get experience, level that particular character up, all the way to potentially 20. You'll earn attribute points and talent points, which together make up the bulk of the more permanent progression that happens regardless of the run you are currently on. The attributes, of course, just make you generally stronger, and then the talents give you big passive perks to whatever you happen to be doing. The other bit of progression in the menus, though, is potions. When we are playing the title, 5 different potions can drop, and we can spend all of our gold to upgrade them, which will improve and increase the benefits they provide us in a run. But now let's actually talk about playing the game a little bit. Again, if you're familiar with any Vampire Survivor game or its many spin-offs, that kind of thing, you should pretty much get the gist of the gameplay loop here, but there are a few unique things worth talking about. For starters, when we go to dive into an adventure, we'll pick one of these 3 characters as our main character, and then we can select a companion. The companion is going to auto-attack with their basic attack with us to provide us a little bit of support, and you can also pick a difficulty here. There's only 1 at the start. You have to finish the game to unlock the subsequent difficulties. I believe there's like 5 extra ones. So if you want to continue playing, even after you've worked your way through the first time, you can continue to do so and work on some of that progression, or maybe just try again with a different character, etc. But once we're actually dropped into an arena and we start moving, is of course where things pick up a little bit. And for those who don't know anything about this kind of game, we don't actually make any attacks here. Every attack that is performed is an auto attack, starting with the character we chose and their basic attack. Once we start killing some enemies, picking up the experience they drop, we can level up and start gaining new abilities. This is also dependent upon the class you have chosen. So for instance, the wizard gets a variety of magical spells reminiscent of what Pathfinder has available as its spells that will then also auto-cast in the appropriate intervals. We can see the cooldown when you pick it up. In addition to our basic attack, you can have 3 more main attacks and then 4 passives active at once, which you can get via leveling up or looting them from a chest. After you've picked one of those, you can start finding upgrades for it, which will make it stronger and stronger as you auto-attack everything and become more and more of a killing machine. That said, each class does have a unique active ability that they can use when appropriate, though it does have a somewhat long cooldown. For instance, the wizard can stop time at the appropriate moment, which will then sort of store up the charges of their spells that would have normally gone off, and then when time resumes, all of that happens at once, and you'll have had the chance to get clear of being swarmed by enemies, etc. Each class also has different base stats as well. For instance, the fighter has more health and armor than the wizard does, so they're a little more survivable by default. Now, outside of killing things and leveling up, what you want to be doing really is chasing down the chests that will be spawning in and around you or dropping from enemies, as chests have the potential to drop several upgrades all at once, which means you don't have to wait on leveling up to find more of them. What's actually in a chest and what you can get out of it comes down to a d20 roll naturally, where the range you roll decides how much loot you get from an individual chest. though you can turn that off if you don't feel like waiting for the animation every time. And as far as the gameplay goes, that's kind of the bulk of it, but there is a little bit more to mention. Rather than survive a specific amount of time, what we're actually trying to do on each floor of the Gallowspire is kill a certain number of enemies. Once the enemy's slain counter reaches its threshold, the level ends and we are teleported to the next level, where we get to do it again and grow in power. However, the game is divided up into 4 sections. Every few levels, you'll face the boss of that section. The first one here is the Grave General, and the first time you run into them, you'll probably die pretty much immediately because you don't have the passive roguelite buildup to get through it, but eventually you'll defeat them and move on to further areas. Though I did want to mention the really cool thing about these bosses in between acts is that they do actually have a few mechanics to them. That is to say, big attacks you need to avoid, summons and telegraphs and things like that need to be managed, which I thought was an interesting take on a game like this, and combined with working your way through the levels, does manage to retain a somewhat quick feeling of a dungeon crawler. And at the end of that dungeon is a face-off with the Lich himself, Torbafon, and defeating them marks the end of a successful run. But like any good Lich, killing them is quite difficult, so plenty of reason to go back and do it again. And as simple as all of that is, that pretty much sums up what Gallowspire Survivors is all about, as these types of games tend to be quite simple, but nonetheless pretty engaging. Especially since they are a pretty great way to kill some time for starters, which means playing them on things like a Steam Deck or simply any more portable format is definitely appealing under the right circumstances. And while I don't think it's the deep RPG experience a lot of people know from the other Pathfinder games, I still had some fun engaging with it and getting all of that Pathfinder flavor in a much quicker format, so to speak. Overall, I'd say it's a pretty good way to kill some time more than anything else, and as long as it doesn't wind up being expensive, I think games like this definitely have some value. That said, I do not have the pricing information for you. They didn't send me that information. Depending on the time of day you're watching, I might actually not know it before you wind up knowing it. But for me, I think if they keep it in the $10 to $15 range, especially for an early access title, then it'll be a good way to experience a little bit of Pathfinder without having to spend potentially dozens of hours getting deep into an RPG, which occasionally has its own merits. That said, that's pretty much going to do it for this video. I certainly hope you enjoyed it. By all means, let me know what you think about the title down in the comments section below. And don't forget to like and subscribe while you're at it. But that's going to do it for me today. So, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.